apologise for my age and my complexion. Some of these things are unavoidable. So today we're looking at assessing the quality of democracy. We know democracy. We think we know democracy. We think we love it. It's full of good vibes and positive intentions and everything. But in fact, it's a complicated tool, and it needs a better understanding. None of us are educated in democracy. We all learn it by rote we all learn it by experience as we reach the workplace, we hit the streets or whatever. But we don't learn about it in schools. We don't learn about it in universities. And we find that, to participate in a democracy, you need more skills than we're given.
Someone did studies at A level of the British Constitution.
Oh, really? Did you? I'm impressed. We'll talk about that. But the whole business of assessing the quality of democracy isn't something that's ever touched upon. And I think we're in the forefront of this. Our little tiny co-op is in the forefront of this. I've given you today's agenda because just to give you an indication of where we're at, but also you'll see each slide has a little, the agenda is repeated up here, so you can work out for yourself how soon it's going to be over, because I know that people require that. I've handed out pieces of paper. One is marked Democracy Audit Criteria, the other is Democracy Audit Indicators. Does everybody have a copy?
No, I don't.
If I could pass that back. The first page to look at is the indicators. If you would, just have a glance down there. The indicators, as you can see on your pieces of paper, the indicators, I'm going to gallop through this because it's not really very entertaining, this stuff. But if you can imagine it in the context of a democratic organization of which you are a member, it might have more appeal. What we're looking at is adherence to constitution. Every co-op should have a constitution, and to assess its democracy, it is always useful to go back to the written documentation to see what was intended by the founders of that particular organization, and then to assess current practice in the light of that original paperwork, to see if there's consistency, and to measure the variation, and to see if there's a solution to that. The mechanics of democracy are effectively accountability and demarcation and delegation. Accountability is simple enough. You can try and work out to what extent the people who are carrying out activities on behalf of the democratic organization are accountable to the membership of that organization. Demarcation and delegation is something that we don't talk enough about in co-ops, I think, because the essence of cooperation isn't just that everybody has a say in the decision making, it's also that we understand that we delegate some of those decisions. We don't expect to be a party to every decision that's made in every co-op, but we delegate to people, and those people can make those decisions within certain parameters, but ultimately those decisions are reviewable by us. We look at that, we look at those decisions, and we inform the people who are making those decisions, either they're doing a good job or not such a good job, and we might even replace them. That's an important aspect of cooperation, is that we delegate, we understand delegation, and if it needs a review as to who it's delegated to, we have no qualms about embarking on replacing those people. Clarity is how clear all of this is to the average member. And then finally, satisfaction. How happy in subjective terms are the people within the democratic organization with what the democratic organization is doing. We actually have to look at the criteria. If you look at the criteria sheet, you see that we assess the indicators on the basis of documentation, observation, and interviews. So the documentation that we go through is the constitution, the accounts, the reports, the minutes especially, the business plan if there is one, and any other documentation that's on hand that might have any relevance whatsoever to the democracy of the organization. If we were called upon to review your co-op, your organization, we would be getting knee-deep into some of this stuff here just to get a grip on it, to understand it, and to assess it, and to compare it to similar documentation in other organizations. Observation, we actually attend meetings and sit in on meetings, and we do a little bit of small stopwatch work and ticking about who's speaking when and how often they're speaking and where the dominance in the speaking cycle is occurring, and measure that and produce a report and feed it back. And we also look for things like, are other people apart from the minute secretary actually taking notes? Things like that, because the most successful meetings are the ones where everybody's got a piece of paper and pen and is taking notes on what's going on. We look at regularity and notice of meetings. Sometimes meetings of co-ops are a bit haphazard and cycles are unpredictable and attendance is low. So you need to have a clear cycle of meeting management that's taking place, and that can be measured as well. There's more detail in that, and I'd be happy to go into it with anybody who wants to know more, but the third aspect of this is subjective interviews. This is where we get down and dirty with individual members and interview them. If it's a huge co-op, we do a cross-section. If it's not such a big co-op, we've done them recently with Daily Bread Co-op. I don't know if you know it down here. And we're just in the throes of finalizing the draft with which they themselves are going to be happy so that we can publish that document. But we've interviewed a portion of them, not all of them. But in a big co-op, we would look for a cross-section and we talk to people about their subjective experiences of what's going down and their subjective understandings of things like the documentation and what takes place at meetings and the outcomes of strategies and or business plans that may or may not be in place. So that's really the nub of it. And what we then do is we get to the reporting stage and produce draft reports, present them at meetings of the organization, and post internally on locations throughout. We did one at the Welsh Centre for Alternative Technology and posted it at various sites. It's quite a big site. We posted it at various points around there and encouraged people to write directly on it. And assessed their responses to those drafts and then varied the drafts accordingly. Nowadays, of course, we don't go to public postings on websites until we reach the final draft, and that usually follows the feedback session. And the reason I've given this its own bullet point is because the feedback is often the toughest to get because people are so busy that it's hard to nail them down to be specific about what they feel about the drafts that are in front of them. But nevertheless, we've done that. We finally got one back from Daily Bread yesterday, and that's was part of the hold-up. But that is an important element of the whole process, is that you hear back from the membership, from the co-op itself, what they felt about the audit that's just taken place. It's still in its... We developed this in the late 90s, and then gave up on it for a while. But I was so fed up. I was involved in the cooperative group when the cooperative group underwent its constitutional change when the bank was imploding. And I was so fed up with all of that that I thought, really, it's time to get back to work on this. And so we're back on stream, trying to refine this and trying to mainstream this so that people in larger co-ops have a tool that they can present for approval at an annual meeting. And that it wouldn't be something that they'd have to necessarily follow up on themselves. It wouldn't have to be something that they'd have to convert a lot of people on.
Sorry.
It would be something that is mainstream, that everybody understands. Somebody would stand up in an annual general meeting and say, we want democracy audit done on this organization. If it's passed, there's enough momentum for people to just say, okay, we know what that is, and we can get one done. There doesn't have to be any more input from the members at that stage, and the chief exec, if he resists it, everybody understands that that's what's happening. The chief exec is actually resisting an audit of the democracy. That says something about the organization, and it says something about the chief exec. So it's a tool for ordinary members with facility to review the way the organization is working on its democratic principles. So the methodology is still developing, and we need lots more instances. We need lots more examples. We've run about, I think, 5 altogether, which is not a lot. You need a backdrop of information to be able to do some comparative analysis, and we don't have enough for that as yet. But we're looking for places. I don't know if Suma might be interested. It was actually John Walker who, I don't know if he's still there. He left and did he come back to?
No, he's not with us at the moment, but I didn't know of John.
Right.
But yeah.
Because it was conversation with John Walker initially that got me started on this. Yeah. So I don't know if Sue is interested, but if they'd like to discuss it, I'd be very happy to come up and go through some of the detail. We do data. The data may seem obscure, but actually what we do is we identify decisions that are being made in committee. We tag them and we trace them. We grade them and we trace them, and it becomes a numbers game eventually. But the numbers are very interesting because you can show, for example, numbers of meetings per number of decisions per meeting hour, and you can do that on the basis of whether they are major policy, minor policy, routine, supplementary, or carried forward. Right. So if you have a meeting that's got 10 decisions made within an hour, but they're all carried forward decisions, it's not going to be as impressive as a meeting that says 3 major policy decisions are made within an hour. So the comparative analysis there is available, it's there. We just need more examples to put into the machine. The opportunities here are any democratic organization that wishes to review its internal democracy has us as a tool, not just us, other practitioners as well that we're working with and training to some extent. And there's a scope here for practitioners, whether people from other CDBs might be interested in engaging in this kind of process and running audits yourselves. Talk to us, we'll go through some of the stuff with you, and then what we're trying to do is establish a kite mark. It's still early days, but we'd like to establish a kite mark. And we are trying to do it through the university as well. We're trying to get some training modules established. Some kind of certification to allow for practitioners to get out there. The final element, of course, was reliant on the expectation of students being here. Because last year we had students who were on placement with us and assisted us in the audit that we ran down at Daily Bread Co-op. And they responded very positively, and in fact wrote positive responses, which is unusual apparently at the university. They actually wrote positive responses. I don't know if you saw any of that. Parag Shah was handling all that stuff. But he was so impressed that he came and said, "Can we do it again?" And I said, "Well, you've got the money," and I haven't heard yet whether we got the money. But hopefully there is some scope there. And I'd be very pleased to talk to students about the opportunities that this arrangement has to offer. That's it for me, unless there are questions. It's a gallop through, I understand, but it has to be.
I'm curious about the business model, or like how many are you working, and who are you imagining the members to be of your cooperative? And I was also curious about what kind of rates do you charge?
Well, my cooperative is basically 3 people.
Yeah.
And there's no formalities to it. It's just we occasionally get together, we talk. But that's my cooperative.
Yeah.
Democracy Audit in my co-op probably wouldn't work very well because there's just not enough crystal to mill. But
the Democracy Audit is not a business. It's not your business.
It's,
is a project.
it's an aspect of my business.
Yeah,
We're,
okay.
we're trying to develop this as a niche.
Yeah,
But we do co-op development, we do co-op development, co-op support,
yeah,
small business support of any
Yeah.
kind, just like you guys probably.
yeah,
But we work with old people as well.
yeah.
We're experienced with old people. But in terms of if it were to happen, say at SUMA, the way it would work is that the membership would hear about it and they'd say, we'd like to invoke an audit. So we'd like to have an independent body come in, go through the paperwork and the experiences as per these outlines, do an assessment and feed back to us about what they, the independent body, us, thinks of the quality of the democracy in this organization.
How long does this take and how much do you charge?
It depends on the period,
The organization.
the period of review and the size of the organization. So we negotiate at the outset the period of review, because it might go back a year, it might go back 2 years, it might go back 3 years, right? It might go back 6 years. It depends on how much money the organization has, how much will it has. And if it's a small organization, and we're going back 1 year, it's not going to cost a lot. It cost about £1,000, and that was paid for by the university, so it wasn't But a bigger organization that wants to go back further, because the further back you go, the more useful the information and data will be, the more expensive it gets. And our base rate is kind of $250 a day, but we're flexible on that. We just work with clients on the basis of what's affordable.